Hello and welcome to a new lesson. Why is literature considered an art? Let's discuss the topic. The justification for literature as an art form lies in its capacity for number one, creative expression. Because literature is the field in which you express yourself creatively. The second point is its use of aesthetic principles, what we call aestheticism, the beauty of words, the beauty of ideas, the beauty of imagination, the beauty of language, beauty in style and form, and in all its landscape of literature. And the third one is, and its profound ability, its deep ability, its inherent ability to provoke, to evoke, to create emotional and intellectual responses that transcend, that go beyond mere information transfer. So why is literature considered an art? Because it has the power to express ourselves creatively. It follows aesthetic principles in which beauty of everything is taken utmost care of, whether it is language or style or manner of writing or matter of writing. Literature also generates in us emotional response. Sometimes we feel emotionally attached to a character, to a situation, to an incident. Literature also evokes in us intellectual responses. We analyze something intellectually, critically. We talk about the issue, talk about the character, talk about the central theme that transcend, go beyond the mere information transfer. We have some more ideas in this respect. Tools of literature. What are the devices being used in literature? What are the ways through which writers express themselves, poets express themselves? Like a painter uses pigments, colors to create an art of painting, or a musician uses instruments to create a piece of music, in the same way, a writer or a poet uses language, words, phrases, and sentences as tools to express his/her artistic imagination. So in the hands of a painter, we find colors and brushes as tools. In the hands of a musician, we notice musical instruments as tools to create or compose a piece of music. In the same way, a writer or a poet uses language as a tool, words as a tool to express imagination. We move on to the next point, craft or art of literature. Why we call literature as an art form, or literature is a craft? Because of its aesthetic excellence, its beauty of thought, its beauty of form, beauty of expression. No any other branch of knowledge has so much beauty of expression, of thought and language as we find in literature. Let's see. Literature involves a high degree of a skill or craft. Next point. Literary figures like writers, poets, dramatists, novelists, and so on make conscious use of, thoughtful use of style, rhythm, tone, structure, and imagery to create a work of aesthetic beauty. We continue. They exploit figurative language such as metaphors, similes, personification, and symbolism for beauty and depth of meaning. Because figures of a speech, what we call figurative language, add to the beauty of expression, add to the layers of meanings, provide symbolic significance to the content in literature. Then we have form and structure. They create a structure of a sonnet, any piece of poem, any form of poem, a novel's narrative arc, how a novel is built, its plot and theme, one thought after another, one event after another, or rhythm of a piece of poetry or prose, are all artistic constructions. A normal person cannot compose a piece of poem, a piece of novel, a piece of a story. Next, diction, what we call word choice. The careful selection of words for their sound, connotation, and impact transforms plain communication into evocative art. The language of literature, or the language used in literature, or what we call diction in literature, the choice of words by the poet and the writer, it transforms a normal event into an evocative piece of art. With the help of language, with the help of the choice of words, with the help of the diction, a writer or a poet brings high impact upon the psychology of the audience, in the way they tell their story, they narrate an event, and they express their thoughts. Therefore, literature, like music, like painting, like photography, like making a film, is also considered an art because of its aesthetic excellence, because of its form and structure, and because of the way in which poets use diction, use language to express their thoughts. We have some more ideas to understand. It's very important here to understand the distinction between literature and mere writing. It's important to note that while all literature is writing, not all writing is literature as art. All literature is writing because literature is created into the written form. But all writing cannot be considered literature, cannot be considered as art. How? Let's see. Technical manuals, journalistic reports, or legal documents are forms of writing with a functional or informative purpose. Such writings have their own role, but they play functional role. They play informative role. They give us some information. They instruct us to do something, but they cannot be considered as part of literature. Why? Because they lack beauty of expression. They lack aesthetic excellence. They lack the beauty of form and style. They lack high degree of choice of words. We have some more ideas. Literature, particularly in the sense of fine writing, excellent writing, refined writing, elevated form of writing, is distinguished by its artistic intention and aesthetic value. So the language of literature, the expression of literature, the imagination of literature, the ideas found in literature are completely distinguished from other forms of writing in that literature presents everything in an artistic manner, which creates aesthetic value for the audience or for the readers. Meaning of literature. Levels of meaning of literature. In fact, the meaning of literature operates on two levels, works on two levels. What are they? The first one is general meaning of literature, and the second one is artistic meaning of literature. Now let's discuss each one of them in detail. General meaning of literature. But before we talk about this, first we should try to understand the literal meaning of literature. The word literature is derived from, as defined in the Oxford English Dictionary, the Latin term litera, meaning an individual written character. In short, it may refer to a letter. Now we move on to the most general definition, meaning of literature. In more general and simple term, literature is any collection of written work on a particular subject, on a specific subject, on a subject which you have selected to write upon. And that subject matter could be anything. For examples, it could be a collection of written work on science, and in that way we can say scientific literature, or literature of science, or collection of work of science. Likewise, film literature, like collection of work on film, that is to say literature of film work. And in the same manner we can have advertising literature and so many other branches of knowledge. So this is the most general definition of literature, which means a collection of written work on any specific, particular, special subject. Now we move on to the artistic meaning of literature. In that way, literature also refers to the class of writings distinguished for beauty of its style or expression. Here the word distinguished is very important. A level of writings, criteria of writings, which is distinct, and the distinction is made because of its beauty of its style and expression, in the way writers write, in the manner they treat the subject matter, in the way they play with the words, they decorate the ideas with beautiful language, quality of form, expression, and ideas of universal and permanent interest. This is the artistic meaning of literature, which has high level of form, elevated expression, universal ideas which have permanent value. That is the point here. We continue our discussion. It is found, like artistic expression of literature, meaning of literature is generally found in the works such as novels, plays, poems, and essays. We move on to the next stage of our discussion, that is distinguishing characteristics of great literature. Distinguishing qualities of great literature. What are those qualities? What are those traits that make great literature further great, valuable, memorable, quotable, and so on? Number one, artistry and style. What is that? The language is creative, inventive, and carefully structured to evoke emotion and provide an aesthetic experience. This is one of the most important characteristics of great literature. We have the next point, exploration of human experience. What is that? It delves into the complexities of life, examining universal themes like love, loss, identity, and morality. The next point we have universality. The ideas and themes resonate with people across different cultures, races, and time periods. We continue our discussion. Permanence. It endures over time, remaining relevant and meaningful to new generations of readers. Suggestiveness. It uses symbolism, imagery, and nuance to suggest deeper meanings rather than just stating facts. So, what we come to the point is that distinguishing characteristics of great literature must have inventiveness, must follow a different style, must follow to explore human experience, must have universality of ideas, must have permanence value, and must be expressed in terms of symbolism and imagery, because this reflects the deeper meanings hidden in the expression of human feelings. Definitions of literature by authoritative sources. Introduction. Literature is broadly defined as written or spoken works that express ideas, emotions, and stories with artistic, cultural, or intellectual significance, intellectual importance, of intellectual value. It encompasses, it includes, it consists of, it contains both imaginative and factual texts, both creative and realistic texts, both inventive and actual events of life, ranging from poetry and novels to essays and biographies. We move on to the next idea, that is Ezra Pound, a famous literary figure, defines great literature is simply a language charged with meaning to the utmost possible degree. According to this important personality, in literature we find language is full of style, beauty, decorated with imaginative ideas to the highest level of expression, what we call linguistic expression. We move on to the next. McGint opines, to me, literature is about the obsession with ideas. If you don't have deep feeling towards something, if you don't have intense emotions towards something, if you don't feel so deeply about something, you are not going to write a beautiful piece. So literature, according to this literary figure, is all about how much obsessed you are with the ideas, how much involved you are with the content, with the subject matter, how deeply you feel about something to express. That is the idea here. We move on to the next. Beachey speaks, literature is a way, is a manner in which we can capture and interpret what's happened and is happening to us personally. So literature not only provides an opportunity to express what has happened to you personally, what has affected you personally, what has moved you personally, but and to the world as a whole. So literature is all about a way in which you interpret an event in the way it has personally affected you, and also it has affected the world. That is to say, how relevant it is to the common people. We continue our discussion. According to Merriam-Webster's Collegiate dictionary, writings having excellence of form or expression. In literature, we have the best form and best way of expression, elevated form and elevated expression. That is why here it is mentioned having excellence of form or expression and expressing ideas of permanent or universal interest. So literature or writings in literature are not about having excellence of form or excellence of expression which express ideas, but they express ideas of permanent value, permanent interest, universal value. Universal interest, it is acknowledged by people all over the world, irrespective of places. We continue to dig deep into what is the definition of literature. According to Encyclopaedia Britannica, literature is traditionally associated. Literature is generally associated, historically associated with imaginative works of poetry and prose. So in literature, we have plenty of space to include the works of your imagination, the beauty of your thought in the forms of poetry as well as prose, distinguished by the author's intent and the aesthetic excellence of execution. But imaginative works in the form of poetry and prose are distinguished. That is what makes literature different, distinct, because of author's intent, author's treatment of ideas, treatment of the thought and the topic, and in the way they express it beautifully, in the way they execute the ideas in the best of its excellent form, style and expression. That is the point here. I hope you understand the concept. Thank you and goodbye.